Welcome back to Your Health in Your Hands. We've been talking about neuro or brain disorders in children, and in the last segment we spoke about the great secret of life, speaking about proper digestion, the digestive health, the health of your digestive system, and how that relates to proper brain function, but not just brain function, but also brain structure as well. So I felt that in this segment we should just talk a little bit more about some specific examples and some of the things that we have seen from working with this knowledge that the brain and the gut are so closely related, and the health of one affects the other. So I have here a picture of the brain, a picture of the gut, and you can see the arrows pointing back, showing that there's a constant flow between the two. And so one of the things that really pointed out, really flashed this thing and blew this up in my mind was that at one point we were having a lot of kids coming to the center, the Brain and Body Foundation, and they were asking for help, obviously, and a lot of them had cerebral palsy. And so at that time we had a lot of omega-3s from a donor, and so we basically just gave out the omega-3s, and these are really concentrated, very healthy omegas. Remember, we've said before that your brain, the dry weight of your brain, if you take out all the water, what's left is what's solid matter. 60% is made up of fat, and a good proportion of that fat is omega-3s. So it just makes sense that you give omega-3s to kids with brain disorders. You should give kids to everybody, but with brain disorders especially. Anyway, as I was saying, we gave these kids this omega-3s, and what kept on coming back to us was that the parents would say for the kids would start stooling out in their stools. For the first time ever, first of all, they said the stools were black and very smelly, and then when we asked them more questions, we found out that most of these kids had very severe constipation, as in constipation a day, 2 days, 3 days without having stooling at all. But when they started taking these omegas, it's almost like all that backed up stuff just began to come out. And the word again was that it was very smelly, very hard. But after they passed through that phase, the stools started getting better and more watery and more, softer. And they began to have regular stools. Sometimes the oil came out with the stools, which meant that the body was taking enough and the rest was given out. That was a pointer to me. The other thing they kept on reporting was that their child's state of health and alertness and was more alert and more alive than before. Again, it seemed like that's gut, as the gut was healed and inflammation was resolved, we began to see improvements. So that to me was like a woof, light bulb went up in my mind. I'm like, wow, we need to do this some more. So I began to look into it and began to really research and study more about the gut-brain connection. And so, like we said in the other segment, the bacteria and the flora in the gut also play a huge role. So we've had kids who've come with Down syndrome. Down syndrome is like a genetic condition. They usually have a specific feature, almost like a Chinese slanted eyes feature. They are usually short. Many of them are mentally, they're not up to par with their colleagues. Some of them can't even speak. A lot of them are hyperactive, and some actually have lung problems. So some of them are asthmatic and may have other conditions. Some may even have problems in their hearts. Anyway, we started looking at this whole gut-brain connection. And then I remember in one seminar I attended, he was talking about how they are now looking at, the professor was saying, they're now looking at how the bacteria, the specific gut bacteria, how they can identify which person has this condition or which mental health this person has based on the poop in the gut. And he mentioned Down syndrome. So I said, whoa, maybe we should try that as well. So we got some probiotics, which are actually the good bacteria in nutrient form. So there's actually a way to capture this bacteria and put them in tablets and pills. Of course, you have to get the right kind, and you have to ensure that what you're taking in or giving to your child is of good quality, obviously, because there's a lot of bad stuff out there, quite frankly. And so what we did was that, well, I said, well, let's forget about the omegas for now. Let's just give these kids probiotics. And I can't, it's not like they started reciting Shakespeare all of a sudden. But some parents reported that the child was sleeping better. He wasn't as hyperactive as before. In some cases, some kids, the parents were complaining that it was always urinating on himself. He would go to school and all of a sudden he would just pass out his urine without any warning. And we saw that those problems actually began to abate simply on probiotics. So there's really something there when it comes to the use of probiotics. Another thing that we saw, especially in those who had severe brain damage, we had a patient who at I think about a year old or so, diabetic patient, and mistakenly they gave 100 times. Think about that, 100 times the insulin dose they were supposed to have, and boom, of course, it damaged the brain and shut things down. But the mother started complaining that some of this child couldn't digest food. I mean, she could still eat, but she couldn't digest food like before. And sometimes the stools came out unchanged. I mean, the food came out unchanged. And so that was a pointer too, that because the gut had been damaged, the gut had been affected, the enzymes that are supposed to be created by the gut or secreted by the gut were not like they should. And so we thought, well, why don't we also put enzymes? So there are nutraceuticals that actually have the enzymes prepared. So you just put them in the gut, give them to a child or to an adult. Maybe you're not digesting your food well enough. Some people have those problems. And that helped to digest the food. So this kid who used to have a bloated stomach before, the mother says that stomach just kind of went down because she now had the enzymes, the necessary tools to break down the food and extract the nutrients that she needed, and then left the rest out. So there's a lot to be said for catering to the gut. Obviously, we can only mention a few here in this short time that we have. But again, things that you want to think about. You want to think about omega-3s. You want to think about probiotics. You want to think about enzymes. You want to think about the other things we've talked about, the vitamin D3, vitamin C. The reason why vitamin C is always coming up, and we're always talking about vitamin C, is that vitamin C is what helps to make collagen. Collagen is the most abundant protein in your body. It's what's part of the skin. It's what lines all the passages in your body. Collagen, your respiratory tract, your digestive tract, it's what lines that up. It's what helps to line the arteries. So the stronger your collagen is, the stronger your tissues are, the stronger your tissues will be. The weaker your collagen is, the weaker your tissues will be. And vitamin C is what helps to strengthen and make your collagen healthy. So vitamin C should not be left out of your program. So I hope this has served you. Remember, these are all part of a big picture. You want to check with your doctor, you want to see your doctor, because there are things that aren't covered by the food. Medication is very, very important as well. So don't just run off and do things by yourself. The key things that we wanted to talk about in all these programs is that your body actually has the tremendous potential to heal itself, and your child even has more because she's a child. So it just makes sense to support and give your child the right tools. I hope that has served. Thank you very much for joining us. Be sure to stay tuned next week for your health in your hands.